Hello, my name is Thomas. Welcome to British Culture. Albion Never Dies. In this podcast episode, I talk to the British author Roland Hulme, who's lived in the United States for more than 20 years. We talk about James Bond in the United States. We were particularly looking at the 3 Guy Hamilton movies that are set there. Guy Hamilton, the director of Goldfinger, Live and Let Die, and of course Diamonds Are Forever. That was our structure, but in fact he and I had been talking for quite some time before we recorded, and there are a few drinks, you can hear a few clinks and so on, which I did not edit out. And I just come back from a wedding, so at some point in this episode I show him my footwear, just so you know that's coming up, so it doesn't come right out of the blue. I refer to those listening on the podcast. Of course, this is only right now on the audio format, but there may be clips coming up on TikTok, at British Culture, and a few other places. This was a great chat. We started out with a plan, but quite frankly, we had a fabulous time, and I just invite you to join in the fun. There'll be no sign-off at the end, so I'll say already, thank you. Thank you for choosing to listen to this episode, and it just fades out at the end as the Zoom call runs out. As I say, we had a fantastic time. I just invite you to join the fun.
Okay, Roland Hulme, thank you very, very much for joining me. And
well, thank you so much for having me. And also, I feel terrible I haven't listened to your podcast yet, which inspired this chat, but I'm excited to talk to you.
Yes,
I'm just a terrible person, okay? I'm sorry. I always have so many things going on, and I'm like...
Well, I'm just delighted that you are still talking to me after I disagreed with so much of what you said on the podcast you haven't listened to. So if there's a third appearance in swift succession, everyone listening knows we're really friends.
Well, no, I'm excited to talk to you about that in particular, and I think that's such an interesting... Because we would... the podcast was talking about Live and Let Die. Specifically the book, and I have so many opinions about that, and I was leading the charge against like the censorship of the book, and I've kind of mellowed about that because I do understand there are all, if you're trying to reach out to a new audience, maybe having the N-word frequently mentioned in the book is not quite the way to do that. But at the same time, I think that there is an interesting perspective that Ian Fleming had as a British person going to America that perhaps gets lost in translation a bit. Americans with their viewpoint of America perhaps don't understand where he's coming from, and British people with their viewpoint of America perhaps don't understand that. And I think when the decision was made to censor that book, it was made by all of the folks at Ian Fleming Publications who are like white and British and well-intentioned and well-meaning. And I'm like, I think to a certain extent, there are some historical perspectives and historical contexts of what America was like when Ian Fleming wrote about it that kind of got eroded a bit by those decisions to censor certain things.
Yeah, you're right. I know it's the British perspective on America that's really interesting. Obviously, you have a deep perspective. You've been in America for quite some time.
Yes, 20 odd years now. It's kind of crazy. Nearly 25 years. That's bizarre.
Wow.
I've almost lived in England longer than I've lived lived in America longer than I've lived anywhere else, I have lived in America longer than I lived anywhere else. Oh, wow. There we go.
Oh, wow.
I've got native. I wear a cowboy hat. I've got a pickup truck. I'm like, yeah.
I mean, as we're recording this, for those who are just listening on the podcast, I am wearing red, white, and blue. But that is, of course, because it's the colours of the Russian flag, and I want to send such a message there.
Well, I'm wearing red and blue, and my skin is white. But mine, of course, is the French flag.
I see.
For those years I spent in Paris.
What is it on the French flag? Is like a bar chart. The blue is for the culture, the red is for the history, the green is for the friendliness of the people of Paris.
I haven't heard that one before, but that's brilliant.
The British perspective on the French.
I'm stealing that joke.
In some naval exercises, the Royal Navy, of course, refers to the enemy as just the French. And there was a question when we do joint exercises, what do we do it then if it's a joint English and French exercise? And the answer was the same.
Yeah, I read about, because I'm a history major, and I remember studying the Crimean War, and the British were fighting alongside the French, but the old British generals were still calling the enemy the Frenchies.
Yes.
Even though they were the Russians.
Yeah, some things just don't wash out, It's like...
Now you're quite experienced with America itself, being married to an American, and you went and spent some time out in California, and
That's right, yeah.
so yeah. So, what are your you had the wonderful 10-minute section in response to my section about America, and what are your thoughts about Ian Fleming's viewpoint of America and views in America and context and stuff?
Yeah, I'm always interested in any author's writing is their voice, right? The most boring thing in the world for me would be if I were to read my own voice back to me, right? I want to connect with somebody else, somebody who's different in terms of time, place, culture, whatever. It's a fantastic way to interlock with other ideas. So for me, to connect with Fleming when he goes to America, you are getting 100% what Fleming was thinking, feeling. And for me, that's fantastic. Just as Kipling in India, yeah, it's a white British man. In India, it's not an Indian's perspective, but it is a perspective. It's a valuable perspective. It's an interesting perspective. And, he's not preventing anybody else from writing.
Yes. I think that's fascinating. And I think, to me, the big takeaway from the books, and the books were part of what made me fall in love with the idea of moving to America. I've always wanted to live in America. And it was Goldfinger and Live and Let Die and Diamonds Are Forever, which had Ian Fleming's adventures in America with the American cars and the American eating and Americans and stuff like that. That I was like, this sounds so amazing. I want to go and live in America. And so, even having lived here over 20 years now, I still get excited every day I wake up and I'm like, I'm living an American adventure. And every single day I get excited by things.
Okay. Can I ask what's excited you this morning?
Yeah, just today, I was driving my pickup truck to Trader Joe's, which is a store thing we have out here, to get some salt because we ran out of salt. But I was just driving past this huge American flag that was like waving over some used car lot, and the flag was like the size of a football pitch, fluttering in the wind, and then you had all these pickup trucks there, and I was like, look at that, that's amazing. And then,
to be honest, I'm hearing a lot of American things in that. I'm hearing the pickup truck, I'm hearing Trader Joe's, imagining you driving along a very wide straight road.
Yes, so we were driving down Route 1, which is called the Lincoln Highway, that used to connect Philadelphia with Boston by way of New York. And now they've got all these freeways and stuff that do that, but it was still on that American road. And you've got this weird thing in America. If you want to turn left on a road, you don't, in New Jersey specifically, you can't turn left. You have to turn right and go around in something called a jug handle, which is a type of a traffic system that they have here, which everyone makes fun of. And, the horns are going off constantly. And even every single day I'm here there and I hear like police sirens in the distance. And I'm like, oh, it's like living in a movie.
I've had that same reaction when I'm in the United States, especially because California is where they make so many movies. Because I wander around, I'm like, oh, yeah, they don't look like real policemen. They look like, movie policemen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people always say to me, what's it like living in America? I'm like, that game Grand Theft Auto? It's exactly like that. And I think the problem with Grand Theft Auto as a game, it used to be like a satirical take on America. And America has just become so ridiculous right now that the new Grand Theft Auto that's coming out is kind of like a more grounded, realistic take on America. Because like, how could you have a reality TV show as a president and stuff like that? It's like, there we go. America has become more ridiculous in the satire. But I love it. And I love Americans. I think Americans are intrinsically really, really good people. And I think people get confused and people maybe don't give them credit. They look at like, oh, everybody who voted for Donald Trump is a terrible person. It's like, I know a lot of people who voted for Donald Trump, and a lot of them are really good people.
Yeah.
And, they might have differences of opinion with us, but actually they're the kind of people I would have babysit my kids and have had babysit my kids and go for drinks with and stuff like that, because they're really good people and the things that matter, and they just differ on opinions of politics. And it's difficult. You have to give Americans you have to realize that they are not defined by one particular aspect about them, such as perhaps by the color of their skin. Which is an important one, which ties into the conversations we're having.
Absolutely, especially Live and Let Die, right? So we're touching on that. We talked about the book before. I thought we might talk a bit about the Guy Hamilton film, or films, I should say, right? So Guy Hamilton did 3 American set films.
Yes, and I was kind of amazed actually looking at them. There's quite, Goldfinger, Diamonds Are Forever, and Live and Let Die. I didn't realize that. Well, they were quite a distance apart. Live and Let Die was 9 years after Goldfinger, which I guess isn't actually that long. To me, they seemed like worlds apart.
Yeah, yeah.
But I guess it wasn't that. And I loved Goldfinger, and the movie Goldfinger, I think the plot was better than the book. But that kind of romanticized America. It was like watching North by Northwest. That's one of my favorite movies. It's kind of a glamorous take on America. Diamonds Are Forever with Las Vegas and stuff. But Live and Let Die to me was like the bee's knees. I remember watching that as a young kid and just thinking it was amazing.
Really?
Because it was so exotic to me. Because I don't know, I'm a little older than you, so I don't know about this, but when I was growing up, you didn't tend to have that many black people on television. And the ones from America were really cool and iconic. Like the A-Team was a big TV show.
Oh yeah.
And when I was playing with all my little school friends in the schoolyard, all these little skinny white kids, everyone wanted to be BA. Yeah. And my trick was I always wanted to be Hannibal. So whichever group of kids, they always wanted me there because they were all fighting about who got to be BA Baracus. And I was like Hannibal. So they were like, oh, you can come and join me because that means I can be BA. And Eddie Murphy from Beverly Hills Cop, like he was huge. Eddie Murphy was in everything. And you had the Huxtables and stuff. And like, it was weird. And part of what American culture was growing up in England in the 80s was black. I think it's such an interesting thing because everyone thinks America is like a racist country, but actually, like the American culture, so much of American culture and what we throughout the world think is like cool about America is black.
Yeah,
which is interesting because I think we try to define people by the color of their skin, and it's difficult to do when it comes to America.
Yeah, fair enough, fair enough. And America is, of course, quite big. Basic statement, but it's quite spread out. So even these three Bond films, they do spread out geographically.
Yeah, absolutely. So Goldfinger's in the south, and then Diamonds Are Forever is in Las Vegas, which is like crazy, crazy place. I've never actually. Have you been to Las Vegas?
No.
I really want to go there, but it seems like crazy. And then Live and Let Die, of course, is in the south, but also it's in New York City, and New York City is like such an incredible city. And such a like microcosm of America in some ways, kind of. And but to me, watching Live and Let Die was amazing as a kid because we didn't have that many black people on television. We had Floella Benjamin. I don't know if you might not even remember who she was. There was a wonderful kids show called Play School. Where they used to have these talking animals and stuff like that. And there was this one woman on there called Floella Benjamin who was just wonderful. And we all absolutely adored her. She was like our mom. And then there was Trevor McDonald, I think, was a newsreader. And then I think you're getting to the end of like, Lenny Henry was but then there were like 3 or 4 black people who were on television and everyone else was white. And then you look at this movie where all of the main characters and cast are black and they dress so brilliantly in these amazing clothes. And Live and Let Die is one of the few Bond movies where the bad guy is an actually intimidating person. It's like you actually feel worried for James Bond. It's like Yaphet Kotto, who's a wonderful method actor as he plays Mr. Big and Kananga. And there was always that scene I remember as a kid where he's Mr. Big, this gangster, and then he tears off his mask and he's Kananga underneath. And as a little kid, I have to admit, I saw like this big scary gangster. He tears off the mask and he's another big scary gangster underneath because I didn't quite realize they were two separate people because the makeup didn't differentiate them that much. But it was cool because it's one of the few James Bond movies in which the bad guys are scary and competent. It's like, to a certain extent, especially with the Roger Moore ones, if you watch The Spy Who Loved Me, where obviously Jaws is intimidating, but who's Jaws' buddy?
Stromberg.
The Stromberg, who's the bad guy, who was kind of like a nothing, really. And then there was the other hitman who was the tubby bald fellow. I can't even remember his name.
Yeah, some wrestler.
And like he was absolutely nobody. Whereas Kananga's bad guys are actually kind of like scary and intimidating. And you think, oh, I would be on the wrong side of them, and they're quite competent. And I think that was such a unique that stood out to me among James Bond films. And the other thing about it, I remember finding out a few years later, because a lot of people, I think these days, they look back at Live and Let Die and they're like, oh, that's the racist James Bond film. But at the time, they had the Black Stuntmen's Association of America was the group that came in and did all the stunts. And you had a lot of black talent from the American film industry that came in to help make this movie. And I think that's why, to a certain extent, it's got something about it that's like magical and exciting and has an edge to it that I think other James Bond films don't. It's very much a period piece. It's very much, it's almost like a blaxploitation movie. And I know a lot of James Bond movies, kind of Moonraker is kind of Star Warsy, and you've got Quantum of Solace is kind of Jason Bourne, and you've got other movies that are kind of License to Kill is kind of like an 80s action movie, and Live and Let Die was kind of a blaxploitation movie, but for some reason it just worked, and it felt to me like it captured the magic of the books of this posh upper class James Bond going to a really exotic alien environment and being in actual danger that perhaps you didn't have in other films.
Okay. I really like what you're saying about the villains being competent.
Yes.
Just to give my wife's American perspective, we watched through, loads and loads and loads of Bond films. I think eventually we got to Casino Royale, and she said, "This is the first time American police have been competent." American police, and she's like, "Is this a British thing that American police are all incompetent? Is there anything behind it?"
Yeah, because normally they're driving around and crashing their police cars and and falling over and not being able to catch them and stuff. And competent. It's a weird thing in action movies, but it adds, when you actually think, oh, actually these guys know what they're doing and they're quite dangerous. It adds an edge to it you don't have in many James Bond movies. Yeah,
I always like it when there's other agents and other people who they're actually good. James Bond seems to be stronger because he's the best of a good bunch, rather than he's the only competent guy in the room.
Another one of my favorites is The Man of the Golden Gun, and there's that scene where he's trying to get the bullet back from that beautiful belly dancer, and like these four tough guys get sent into the room, and I'm like, they're four big fat blokes from the pub. Like, I'm not particularly athletic, but I think I could probably have them in a fight. Whereas, Live and Let Die, you actually think, oh wow, yeah, these four people I probably would lose in a fight to quite badly.
Okay. Yeah, and obviously it's quite bad in the books, so.
Yes, absolutely. And it was worse than the books.
I'm curious. I feel we need to row back a little bit to Goldfinger, because there we do get a kind of very different take on the American South. I know nothing of either state particularly, so.
Yeah, I think my take with Goldfinger is it really did feel to a certain extent like an Alfred Hitchcock movie or something, which was the American South. But it's ironic that most black people in America live in the South. And in Goldfinger, there were like one or two black people, and they were normally like the servants, and that was it. Yeah. And I think it was literally like guy who hands over mint julep, guy who opens door for Bond, and that's about it.
Yeah,
which is funny because that's not really an accurate portrayal of what the American South is like, and especially not even in the 60s.
Yeah, and I should say for the 1960s in Britain, you didn't actually have Burt Kwok everywhere. Because obviously Burt Kwok is Goldfinger's assistant, and he's also Blofeld's assistant, and You Only Live Twice. And Burt Kwok is obviously also known as the Pink Panther's assistant. He's pretty well everybody's Chinese friend in British films at the time.
Oh no, I mean that was always the thing, wasn't it? Where you'd have you would have people from a particular racial group played by a white guy.
Yeah. Oh, but Burt Kwok is obviously Chinese, but yes.
Yeah, no, but, I mean, he stood out. He was your go-to Chinese bloke back in the 60s, wasn't he?
Absolutely. And you're saying how unusual it was to have, black people on British TV. Obviously, Last of the Summer Wine is set quite close to where I live.
Yes.
And that was for the regulars were entirely white until Burt Kwok appeared. And his opening line as he explains, "I'm from the East. I come from Hull." In East Yorkshire as opposed to West Yorkshire. Those are different. So.
Which is, and I mean, I think Britain is a very multiracial country now, which is kind of cool and awesome. And like, I was thinking quintessential British person, why I'd like Idris Elba as James Bond. It's like, okay, James Bond is meant to be the white, blue-eyed chap, but Idris Elba is so quintessentially British to me.
Okay.
Like he'd be a brilliant James Bond, and I think it is a very now these days it's a very multiracial country with people from all different backgrounds are quintessentially British. Whereas back in the '60s when these movies were made, it wasn't a very diverse place, especially not on television.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we had Welsh people and Irish
Yes,
people, and yeah.
I
What more could
was
you want? People from Cornwall, I guess.
I was thinking of there's a wonderful one. It's not. It is the most politically incorrect movie ever, and you can't see it anywhere unless you go to some obscure streaming service. But there was Carry On Up the Khyber,
Oh,
which
yes.
which is to me one of the most hysterical movies, and it's kind of a vaguely interesting perspective on British colonialism in India during the Victorian period. But of course, this everyone is played by white people.
Yeah.
And it's these days you're like, okay, I can understand why this film isn't like mainstreamed, even though it is absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, so when
But
they show the Carry On films repeated endlessly on television, that one seems to be out of circulation.
yes, which is a pity because the ending with the kilts, that's like the plot twist we didn't see coming.
Let's leave it there and let the audience either imagine or get to it themselves. You know.
Yes, hopefully I'm not rabbiting, and hopefully people aren't going to be cancelling me left and right with this. But those are my opinions. But that's why, Goldfinger I thought was great, but it didn't really stand out to me. That was like America. That was like Hollywood America to me. It's like, hey, you want to set a film in America? This is what America is according to like British people. And Diamonds Are Forever, I think, to a certain extent, was kind of like that because you had the gangsters, and the gangsters were very stereotypical Italian style gangsters,
Yeah.
and that was carried through in the books as well. I think Ian Fleming had tried to make his gangsters come across as real, and he even had that line of like, "Oh, I thought they were just guys in silk shirts eating meatball subs or whatever."
Yeah.
But and they were kind of like stereotypical Italian bad guys in Diamonds Are Forever, and it was Live and Let Die, where it was like, "Oh wow, this is what James Bond is meant to be about, which is going to somewhere exotic." And America is exotic. I mean, America in the '70s was exotic. I think we kind of take it for granted now. We have so much television and so much news that comes from America. I think we as British people think we understand America, but after living here for 20 years, I realized that no, America is a very, very different country to how we think it is. And
that
I mean,
would be my take, having traveled about a little bit, is I realize Brits don't often treat America as a foreign culture.
Yeah, and
you
it
come
really
with an
is.
assumption that you know it, but
Absolutely. I mean, your experience in California must be very different to my experience living here in New Jersey, New York. And I used to travel around a lot. So I would go to somewhere. My favorite place I visited was Wyoming, which I absolutely loved. But it was like going to a different country. It was amazing. They spoke the same language and we used the same money. But like I was doing some stuff at a school there, and all the kids who went to school, hundreds of them, were coming wearing cowboy boots because they all came from branching communities. And I was like, they had, oh, look at those. Those are beautiful.
oh
I got,
yes.
oh, you went to wedding in cowboy boots. That's your dogs must be barking.
My dad got them on a business trip when he went to Texas and putting through some pretty big contracts. And so I think after a particularly large contract, just went to a shop that only sells cowboy boots and was vast, bigger than any of the shops in the village we were living in at the time. So
I got one pair of cowboy boots that I've had. I bought in Paris of all places, but I love them. They're so comfortable.
yes,
Eventually. But yeah, all these kids wearing cowboy boots, and you talk to people, and out in Wyoming, what is important to them is different to what is important to people living in New Jersey. It must be different to what people living in California must experience.
Yeah.
And I think we take it for granted that America is this ubiquitous culture, but it's not.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's why it's so interesting that Bond seems to visit a different place each time. I didn't go into A View to a Kill yet. But yeah, then we have another take on America.
Yeah. And but that's so definitely Live and Let Die stood out for me for that reason. And I love that. Roger Moore, I think, out of all the James Bonds, was the James Bond I saw as like my James Bond. And I kind of like, how I think we all try and see ourselves a bit in James Bond. And out of all of them, Roger Moore was probably the one I see myself most in, which probably says a lot about me. But different elements, like Rosie Carver, for example, where he falls in love with her and, well, he doesn't fall in love with her, he sleeps with her and then threatens to shoot her.
Something quite close.
So that's not very... Yes, but I mean, to me, she was like, it was growing up in the 80s, probably the first time I had seen a black woman on TV who was like sexy and seductive.
Mm.
And I think back in the 80s, that's so like I was like, wow, this it was all stuff that captured my imagination. It was a viewpoint of America that I hadn't seen anywhere else. And I think that's what sets it apart from Diamonds Are Forever and Goldfinger,
Yeah.
which are kind of, familiar viewpoint of America, whereas Live and Let Die, it was different.
Okay. Just so you know, we've got about 4 minutes left. So here's the killer
Oh,
question. Here's the killer question,
okay.
which is obviously America has a big film industry.
Yes.
America portrays itself a great deal. When you have British filmmakers going to America, do you feel they approach it in a different way, or do you feel it's the same thing?
I think to a certain extent, British films in America do kind of try and look at things through a British lens and try and make it fit through a British lens. I was thinking very much about, of all films, Love Actually the other day, that wonderful film with Hugh
Oh
Grant,
yeah,
where
yeah.
you've got the US president who's a sleaze bag and stuff like that, and have this whole speech about our special relationship. But I think to a certain extent, when British films are set in America, they it's almost like a this maybe this sounds insulting. It's almost like a condescending viewpoint of American culture.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is what Americans are like. And Americans, they're very nice people, but they're a bit gauche, and then maybe they're not so
Yeah, they're
smart,
not
and they
quite
don't
there
understand.
yet. Give them a few hundred years and they'll sophisticate, you know.
And I think American films, when they're set in Britain, maybe those that have the same thing. They lean into the stereotypes and things a
Mm,
bit, but I think the American film industry uh, gives itself a more accurate viewpoint. But also, there are many different American film industries.
mm,
So we in Britain get the big blockbusters and the mainstream films. But in America, for example, there's black cinema. It's huge.
mm.
You've got this chap called Tyler Perry, you might have heard of, who makes rakes. Oh, he is a black actor, and he wrote plays, and now he makes movies, and he's got a $1 billion movie studio. He makes these incredible movies that come out and are hugely popular that we just don't watch in
Mm.
Britain because they're about Black America and the Black American experience, and they're black
Okay.
actors, and they're for a black audience, and you don't really see them in the UK. Even though I've watched quite a few of them, and some of them are very, very, very good movies and really interesting movies. And there are so many different segments of cinema that we don't get to experience in Britain
Mm.
because I don't know, maybe they're just not, maybe they aren't being seen as potentially having the same appeal to a British audience that they would in America because they're made for a segment of the American audience. American Christian movies is another huge
Oh
thing. We
yeah.
spoke about evangelical Christianity and stuff like that, and like there are cinema companies that make movies about, there's one called God is Not Dead or something like that, or God is Dead, and it's all about a teacher who's an atheist, and then he finds God through his experiences and stuff. And to me, I'm kind of like, what makes me want to vomit because that's really not my kind of thing. But I still respect it as
Mm.
um, a cinematic enterprise, and it reaches a huge audience who love these movies. But those are the kind of movies you don't get in the UK because I
Yeah.
think most British people would be cynical about it, like I would, and be like, we don't want, you know that kind of thing shoved down our face. So I think that's it. There is a whole side of America that we don't generally get to see in the UK.
Mm.
And I think
Brilliant.
Live and Let Die gave us just a little bit of a snippet of
Yeah.
it. We suddenly saw behind the curtain because it had an awful lot of black American movie talent behind
Yeah.
making that film come to life. And I think that's why there's something magical about it.
Brilliant. So that's the standout. That's the standout film. Thank you very much for joining me. We have less than 60 seconds. So thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me. And I'm amazed I managed to get all that in within the minutes we had left.
Fantastic.